Hey guys, and welcome to Faewood. So in this next video for my backdrop, I'm making a Curiosities suitcase. Sort of something you would imagine a wizard might carry around with him, with all of his magical wares, spell scrolls, potion bottles, ingredients for magical potions. And I got this suitcase from Hunted Antiques and Collectibles, which was in a video I had. First, I want to make those spell scrolls. So I actually have these stamps on hand that have script and some brown embossing powder. So I used an old marbled paper that I had on hand. You could use a plain paper, to be honest, would be fine. If you don't have script, like a stamp script thing, you could actually print something off instead and decorate it that way to make your spell scrolls. Or if you're good at calligraphy, that would be another option. There's all different ways. I only did the script for one of my spell scrolls because it took a bit of time to do this, and I wanted a couple of scrolls that were just plain aged paper as well. But basically I'm using my stamp here with the clear embossing ink, and then you sprinkle over it the embossing powder. Once you've done that, you then tap off the excess, and I use this little craft tidy, which is perfect for things like this. You can buy these online, just look up craft tidy. It's got a little plug hole in it, this little pink tray that I'm putting the powder into, that you can then pour things easily back into the bottles. It's so worth getting. Very, very good. So basically I'm making multiple prints of this stamp onto this piece of paper. Now the idea is that if I use this embossing powder instead of just ink, that when I put paint and so forth over the top, the script won't bleed or move or what have you. But, you know, having said that, if it did bleed and move around, that might actually add to the design anyway. So if you were printing it, say, with an inkjet printer, and some of it then bled a little bit after putting paint and stuff on top of it, it all adds to the fact that it's very old ink paper and aged and so forth. Now once I was done with the stamping, I've used some acrylic paint to start with and really washed it out with a lot of water and made a sort of light brown mustardy colour, the colour that you might think paper would go when it was aged, that, you know, yellow umber sort of colour. And then once I've put a layer of the paint on, I use my heat gun to dry it off. Now if you don't have a heat gun, you could just wait till it naturally dries, or maybe use a hairdryer or something like that. I've also used an oven before, but you have to be very careful if you're putting paper in an oven and really keep an eye on it. Now I put another layer on top of that because I wanted it even darker, and I've got shellac on hand, which is just the perfect colour, I think, for something to look aged. So I covered that back and front, and then I put some dark brown splats on it as if ink has splattered across the page as well. Now you might find, like me, that when you do one side with the acrylic paint, that it does want to roll up like that, and that's because it's wet on one side and dry on another, so that makes it sort of roll until you put the same paint on the other side, and then it should stay flat. So that might be a little bit of a challenge, but you know, once you've done both sides, it worked out fine. The nice thing about this sort of technique is that you really can't go wrong, because if you make a mess, that usually just adds to it looking even more aged and worn and old. So yeah, so you can see it's quite imperfect. The paint sometimes smudges around a bit, may not be a completely even coating. It's probably better that it's not. If you get like water spots and things like that, that's even better. You could potentially use a watercolor paint and then try and actually make it have water spots, or say ink or something like that. So some of the pages I did put the splats of ink on it, and some I didn't, just because I thought, you know, authentically you wouldn't necessarily have an even spattering of ink across your different parchments. You might have it on one or a couple, but not all. Then I've just ripped the pages so that it looked even older. A lot of very old antique paper was made with quite rough edges, and it would be normal for it to look imperfect. A lot of it because of the handmade nature of paper back then, and it wasn't being manufactured. You know, it did have that organic rough edge to it. I actually then used incense there to sort of add some little burn marks and things. Now be very careful, of course, when you're using anything flammable with paper. The incense was a bit easier to control. Now I wanted to make this quite authentic, and luckily I did have some leather wax and a stamp available that I've used in previous things. I used this for our wedding invitations. And you can buy this online if you just look up, you know, a letter stamp or letter sealing wax. You can get different colours and things. If you don't have this and don't want to actually purchase your own wax and stamp, you can actually buy these days pre-made little wax seals that look authentic, and you can just stick them onto things. So that would be an option if you didn't want to do it this way. Now you can see I've actually used a rubber band to help the page stay rolled up while I do this, because it just makes it a bit easier. But once you've got the wax on there, it will stay rolled. Now there's my spell scrolls all together there, and it's time to start assembling my little wizard suitcase. Now you may have seen the bugs that I purchased for my backdrop and some of the Curiosities projects I've been doing with the bugs. I wanted to use a mixture of large and small bugs in this. For Curiosities, the nice thing is that you can use so many different things for this. It's best if things look broken and worn. You know, it's really creepy if you use, say, doll parts. You might use old keys, old rusted tools, anything that looks very ancient and rusted and worn. And then maybe unusual things as well that could be a magical ingredient. Now to attach everything, I've used various different things. I've used some double-sided tape, I've used some drawing pins, and on a couple of items I used a bit of glue. The cogs and things that I attached, I used a little strip of leather and glue and a drawing pin. Now I did find that the double-sided tape that I have isn't the best. It stuck things on for a little while, and now I'm finding a week later things are coming off now. So just bear that in mind, and I'm not sure that this would be the case with all double-sided tapes. This is meant to be able to hold a bit of weight, but I did find it to not hold enough. In that case, you could use like hot glue or some other option to stick things on. Now you can see I've used various things like feathers. I've got some crystals that I've put in there. I have some watch parts that I've used for jewelry. I stuck a couple of those in. A shell. You can use all sorts of different things. I think a good mixture of natural items with very old, rustic, rundown items is a good balance. I also had some polished stones that I thought would look cool in the backdrop there, and I've just used the double-sided tape on those as well. Again, I actually am going to go back and use hot glue. As I mentioned, some of those things just didn't want to stick on there too well. So I think hot glue is probably the best bet. Now some people put little skulls in these as well. You might want to go to a second-hand shop and just look around for some very old worn things, or maybe some tools that you've had laying outside that are just really old and could be ancient. That'd be perfect for a thing like this. I'm trying to use a fair few bugs in this because I've got so many that I bought for this Curiosities cabinet. So I've got a little row of bugs I'm popping on there. I have a few crystals that have been around the house that don't really have a home, and I'm popping those in there as well. Now I'm going to have this sitting open on my bookcase, and I have a bit of foam sitting in there that I reused from some packaging, and I'm putting material over the top, and that's just so that when I put things inside it, they'll sit high enough for you to see them, especially when I'm filming. So I've put my little spell scrolls on there to one side in a little cluster, and then I've got these glass jars that you would have seen in the Hunted Antiques and Collectibles video as well, if you did watch that. And to integrate my craft pieces into this, I'm putting some beads inside these jars. So this is entirely usable. If I need to access these beads, I can just pour them out of these bottles again. You could use a range of different bottles. I've only got 2 on there, but you could put a few on there and store craft things. You could pin craft items to the back as well. Just make sure you can get them off again if you are wanting to use them. And that's the finished wizard suitcase. So I hope you guys have got some inspiration from this. Maybe if it's even just to make some little spell scrolls. Perhaps you'd like to store your beads in little potion bottles, or maybe you'd like to make the entire suitcase of curiosities and have this in your own home. If you've enjoyed some of these videos from me, make sure you do hit subscribe. It really helps me a lot to hopefully get to that 1,000 threshold. But I hope you have gained some inspiration, and I'll see you all next time in Faewood. Bye guys.